I had a meltdown in London after coming back from Nepal. And I thought nothing had changed. Nothing had changed out there, but everything had changed in here.
And that's where something inside of me snapped. And I realized that things had to change.
The greatest lesson I learned, not just from doing the show, but from traveling, is that ultimately at the base of our humanity, we're all the same.
Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in.
Hello friends, and welcome to It's Not What You Think. I am so excited about today's podcast because we have with me one of the people who changed my life. And I am not exaggerating when I say that. And by the end of this podcast, it will become very clear. This is Leon Logothetis. Hello, Leon, and
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast. I haven't seen you in years, so I was so excited when I came to LA and we had the opportunity to come and do this in person. So I'm going to share with you the story of how Leon and I met and why he's changed my life. I've actually talked about him in my past podcast and in material that I've created. But before I do, Leon, can you introduce yourself and give us a more formal introduction of who you are? I know you're an author. You're also on Netflix. There's quite a few amazing, incredible things you've done in your career. So share with us.
Sure.
And then we dive in.
So I used to be a broker in the city of London. And on the outside, I had pretty much everything you could ever want. And on the inside, I had pretty much nothing you would want. But no one knew. I was very depressed, a lot of anxiety, following a path that I wasn't very proud of. And then I stumbled across the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, which is a romanticized version of Che Guevara traveling around South America, relying on the kindness of strangers. And to cut a long story short, I decided to quit my job and start traveling around the world relying on the kindness of strangers. And I did quite a lot of crazy adventures. I hitchhiked from Times Square to the Hollywood sign with $5. I hitchhiked from the Eiffel Tower to Red Square in Moscow with €5. I then purchased a vintage yellow motorbike, called it Kindness One, sort of like Air Force One, but a little bit yellower. And I drove it from Los Angeles all the way around Earth back to Los Angeles with no money, no food, no gas, no place to stay. All I had was relying on people like you. Unsuspecting Good Samaritans received a life-changing gift on that specific journey that I did. And then I kind of went a little bit even more crazy and drove a 50-year-old Beetle from Alaska in the middle of winter to the bottom of Argentina, which was also in the middle of winter. So I left in the middle of winter and I arrived in the middle of winter, which wasn't the cleverest of things to do. Wrote some books. I hate being a self-promoter, by the way. The English, yeah, you can do it, but I don't like talking about myself, but I have to, because you asked me the question. That's basically it. And I moved to Los Angeles. I live here, write books, do speeches, do TV shows, and get to connect with people like you.
Yeah. And Leon also wrote the Kindness Diaries.
Yes.
That one's important. And he has a Netflix series. I think that's also called The Kindness Diaries.
Yes.
And then you're coming out with a new book called Go Be Brave.
Go Be Brave.
Go Be Brave. Yeah. Yes. So amazing author and also just a really fun series. And as amazing as you are in our resume, I want to talk about our experience together and pull out some of your wisdom that has really deeply touched me in my path. And I want to start by sharing the story of how we met, because that's something where I peppered it in here and there. And what's really special about having you here is that we get to now talk about it live. So, back in 2015, I had a travel blog. I don't know if you remember. It was called The Nomad's Oasis. And when I was working in New York City and basically getting the life drained out of me, which I know you're familiar with, and I remember like my escape, my way of escaping and lifting myself out of like that really repressive lifestyle and basically my misery was I would go on little like day trips around New York City, or I would take the weekend and go to Europe or go to the Bahamas. I would just leave and travel whenever I could, and then I would write a blog about it where I would personalize like Rome or Cartagena, and I would talk about that place like it was a person, like it was a human being and the qualities and the characteristics. And now I'm sure that you don't specifically remember that one tweet that you did, 8 years ago, but it was a really important tweet, Leon, because my friend, one of my best friends, she had tweeted about my blog, and she had like 75 followers, and you were not one of them. So to this day, I don't know how you found this blog. But I remember you said something like "great blog," and you linked to one of my blog posts, the Nomads, and it was a Tumblr with like, I don't know, not even 100 followers. And I remember looking at my Twitter and being like, "Who is this dude?" Because you had like 55,000 followers, and I had like 100, and I was thinking to myself, who is this guy? Why is he tweeting me? Oh my God, he's famous. Like, what's going on? And I remember retweeting you, and we got into an interaction. I don't know if you remember, but we got on a call, and you said something to me that was really impactful. The first thing you did is you shared your story with me about being a broker and traveling the world and deciding to travel the world and write your book, which was so inspiring to me because I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to travel the world, and I was listening. And you said something to me. You said, Celine, when I decided to leave England and to like quit my job, I did it from a place where I was in so much pain. I don't remember if you were suicidal or not. Like you were like not in a good place. I remember you telling me that. And you said I was in such a place of pain that I had to do it because the pain was so strong. And what you shared with me was don't go there. Like, let your decision to change your life, because I was thinking about quitting my job, but I didn't know what to do. You said, let your decision to change your life come from a place of desire, as opposed to like, it's hurting so bad that you need to do it, right? I don't know if you remember that at all.
I do.
Yeah?
I do, yeah.
Is there anything else you remember about that conversation? It's okay if you don't, but because it was so impactful for me. I know there's these moments where you might say something and then forget about it, but the other person...
I remember that part of the conversation. I don't remember the rest of it.
Well, you said that to me, and it stayed with me. And I also remember like kind of, having that with me, being like, okay, I don't want it to like get as bad as it got for you. And having this in mind, and we just kept in touch, and I remember you shared, what was the name of the organization you had started, the one that sent me to Cambodia?
Human Interaction Project. And I wanted other people to have the opportunity to do the same thing. So that's why I created the Human Interaction Project, which was about connecting with people, going out into the world and seeing how other cultures and countries and societies live, and to bring that wisdom back into your life. And I sensed, I don't know why, but I sensed that it would be perfect for you. So I think I mentioned it to you. I think that I said to you, you need to sign up, and maybe I can pull some strings. And then that's basically what happened. And you ended up going to Cambodia and having this amazing experience. And now, 8 years later, however long it was, you've changed your life. And I'm sure you changed many people's lives. And I get your blogs, and you're a very good writer. You really are. I mean, I rarely read blogs, but when you send me your blog, I don't read it just because it's you. I read it because it's very good. Like, there's some real insightful wisdom in what you write. I remember there was one blog, The Fear of Annihilation. We kept trying to connect, right, in order to talk about it. It was such a brilliant blog. And it was so profound and beautiful and simplistic and easy to understand. And I'm very honored that I had the opportunity to kind of, nudge you in the right direction, because that's really what it was. It was just a little nudge, because you were going to get there anyway.
Well, let's bookmark it and we can talk about it next. But thank you so much for saying that. I mean, that was the thing, like you sent me to Cambodia, and in that stage, it was something that if you hadn't presented me with that opportunity, and again, this keeps going back to that theme, the kindness of strangers. And when you ask for help, you're saying, God, universe, almighty, whatever you believe in, like, I'm open. I want to change. I'm ready for change. And I know, when I talk to people that are still stuck in their old ways, and they're like, but how? And one of my good friends, she says, don't worry about the howsies. Like, you just need to know why and what. And I knew I had to get out of that situation, and I knew that there was something more that was waiting for me in my life, but I didn't know how. And on that day that you retweeted that, and then I got into contact with you, it was me following an impulse. There was an intuition that says, reach out to this guy, because I could have easily been like, oh my God, this is so cool, but like been too embarrassed or to reach out, or to even ask. I forget if it was me, whoever initiated a phone conversation, but I'm sure I was like, yes, let's get on the phone, let's do it, let's show up. And then when you told me apply to this thing, I'm freaking applying. And when I went to Cambodia, it just, I wrote some blog posts as well for the organization while I was there. But I don't know if you remember, my grandfather died the day I landed in Cambodia. Like, I landed, I opened up my phone, there was a text message from my father, and he said my grandfather, who I had just met a few years prior and I was getting to be so close with, he passed away. And I just remembered, like, I had this option. He was like, well, the funeral is in a few days in Germany. And I was like, do I want to, like, leave Cambodia and go to the funeral? And I decided that I was going to stay in Cambodia. And the commitment I had made that day, I said, well, if I can't be at the funeral and my heart's aching this way, what if I just break open and allow myself to, like, fully go 100% in on these kids, And when I went to this orphanage and just figuring out how to teach English and just kind of like trying to figure out what to do, because I didn't know why I was there and I didn't know how to do things. But what I knew is that showing up for those children would be what they needed. It's one of those things where, living in New York City, it was so hard to get out of my head out of my ass, just to put it bluntly. Like, it's just, you get so absorbed in the matrix of gotta go to work, gotta go to the gym, gotta go meet a friend for a drink, and then you go to bed, and then you do it again, and you just kind of start going into that hamster wheel, that it was challenging for me to perceive outside of that. And when I got plucked out of that New York City scene and that vortex, and I got plugged into what was going in Cambodia, one of the poorest countries on the planet, like working in an orphanage in Phnom Penh, and these kids, like these beautiful children that are coming, and they've lost their parents, like they're so, like even Cambodia, where 50% of the population is under 21, and the tragedy is so strong, you can feel it, you can smell it in the air. And to be there and have an opportunity to serve and to support, it broke me open. And when I came back to New York, I remember coming back, and I landed on a Saturday night. And then on Sunday, I walked on Washington Square Park, like right before going back to work on Monday. And I remember walking in this park, and everyone's like in their picnics, and they're doing yoga in the park, and it's a beautiful sunny day. And I'm like, oh my God, do these people even know what they have? Like, did I even know what I have? Like, you can sit there and you can just do yoga and be in the sun and enjoy your life. And there's all these children, like on the other end of the planet, that are literally sleeping on the sidewalk on cardboard boxes. And that's when it clicked for me. And I realized I can't keep going. I can't keep living like this. Like, I can't just keep living out my days, working a job that is making big bucks for a faceless corporation and that isn't really invested or caring about moving humanity forward. I can't give my life to this. And that's where something inside of me snapped. And I realized that things had to change. And so, all that being said, I'm curious, because I know I nodded to this around your journey when you were in London and what you said to me around pain. I know you had a journey where you were in so much pain that you like had to break open. And now that I've shared, how it looked like for me, I'd be really curious if you'd be able to share with us what it looked like for you to like have that insight of things need to change.
Sure, that's a great question. It actually happened a little bit before my watching that documentary. I went on a trip to Nepal, and I went there for 2 weeks, and I was kind of hiking, and I was by myself, and I had an awakening in Nepal, and it was a profound moment for me as well. I remember walking through have you ever been to Nepal?
I have been twice. It's one of my favorite countries.
Okay.
And in my book, I have like 3 chapters just in Nepal. I went during my journey, my couchsurfing journey.
Okay, cool. So I remember walking through the streets of Kathmandu and going to this really old bookshop. And I literally, for some reason, I had this urge to go to this bookshelf and put my hand behind it. And I picked up a book, right, called The Drama of a Gifted Child by Alice Miller, which basically kind of explains why we do what we do. So each person has a life trajectory, right? But it's basically because of childhood stuff that's happened to us. So why we do what we do. And I picked this book up. Literally, like I said, I put my hand behind, I remember it now, I don't know what the hell I was doing. I just went like that. And it was the perfect book for the perfect moment. So I read this book, I had this epiphany, and I came home thinking that everything was going to be like it was in Nepal. But it wasn't. Things were exactly the same. The job was the same, the problems were the same, and I had a meltdown in London after coming back from Nepal, and I thought nothing had changed. Nothing had changed out there, but everything had changed in here, right? So it was that moment. It was a couple of months before I actually watched the movie, but there were these like little moments that shifted things until it shifted so much inside that I couldn't do it the same way that I used to do it. And that Nepal journey was a very, very big moment that guided me to the journey and the moment with the movie, right? And that then guided me to quitting my job, then guided me to, the first thing I did was, like I said, I hitchhiked from Times Square to the Hollywood sign, which is just madness. I mean, if you think about it, it is madness. But it was beautiful madness because I started connecting with people. And I started opening my heart up, and people started opening up their heart. So I would say, going even further back from the movie, it was that moment in Nepal when, I'd say not even the moment in Nepal, it was the moment when I came back, because I'd had all these beautiful experiences, and nothing had shifted out there, but everything had shifted in here. And it was like building my life from this space, as opposed to grasping on the outside to fill what was going on inside. Does that make any sense?
I'm literally listening to it oh my
Okay.
God, it's literally, it's different, variations and textures of the same story,
Exactly.
and so many times, like, I love the way every person the way that they articulate it is just so exquisite, because I love what you said around beautiful madness and what I see, the way I see myself, and I see also others in what you're saying, is that for a lot of people, unfortunately, we don't change until we come to a point of crisis. And ideally, in an ideal world, we can see the change and we can start shifting ourselves and evolving before it comes to that point. But it does happen that a lot of people, when they have their awakening, it's like we hit this point of crisis, and what you said summarizes it so beautifully, which is that the external world doesn't change much, but we change and we shift completely in who we are and who we see the world. And there comes a point, I felt this completely, which is like, I can't do this for another day. Like, I'm going to die inside, and life doesn't make sense anymore in this way. Like, I can't tolerate it. I can't take it anymore. And I'm so grateful that I even had that conversation that happened months prior to almost prime me and prepare me for that, because I even remember your words of don't let it be from a place of pain. And there was a point where my life started to fall apart, like collapse upon itself after Cambodia. And it was like, I thought I was going to get this promotion. I didn't get it. And then the guy I was dating at the time, like, broke up with me the day before my birthday. And then my apartment rent, like, super went up, and I knew I had to move in the next few months. And there's all these things. And I remember thinking, how bad does this need to get? And how painful does my situation need to get before I'm going to choose to do something about this? And because I had that guidance and I had those little seeds that were being planted along the way, I made a decision that I was going to change my life. And in the moment, again, it's not the how. I didn't know how. I couldn't have told you that 9 months later I would be on a one-way plane, like doing a circumnavigation around the world. I couldn't have known that. I just knew something had to change. And so I mobilized myself and I started to look for jobs and started to ask people around. But the important thing is like connection, talking to people, asking them for help. Hey, do you know anybody? I'm looking for a different job. First it was a different job. Then it was a different job in a different industry. That wasn't cutting it for me. Then a different job in a different industry, in a different country. And I realized like, this is all just putting lipstick on a pig. Like I'm not actually, I have to do something radically different. If I want things to change, I need to change. Like I need to do something that I've never done before, way beyond anything I could imagine. And when it's so, I love hearing that story around you saying that you watched the Motorcycle Diaries, because from the Motorcycle Diaries, you got this inspiration in your journey. But Leon, like from your journey, I was inspired in my journey, right? And it was like cooking in the back of my mind. And as I was figuring things out, I remember thinking to myself, okay, what if I just travel? But I didn't want to just, I'm a very ambitious, driven lady. And I didn't want to just backpack around the world without I didn't want to just be lost in the world. I wanted to have a purpose, an intention, and a direction. And I remember, based on our conversations, I'm like, what if I do something similar? Like, what if I go around the world and how can I make this my own? And that's when I decided to do the couch surfing without actually using couchsurfing.com and to start going around and through human connection to start sleeping in the homes of strangers all over the planet. And as we know, like me doing that, not only was it an incredibly transformational life experience personally, but I ended up writing a book from it. I ended up being invited to write for Forbes. Like I ended up growing a following. I ended up starting my career and like my dream business from it. So it's really, it's really powerful. Like, because I know you're all about that part of kindness with strangers. And I think what's really important to reflect on is, my God, like one tweet and this and this and this and this and that, and the willingness to get on the phone with a stranger and the willingness to put in a good word for someone. And I know you've had so much experience going around the world, like receiving and giving the kindness of strangers. So I would love if you could share with us, like, what have been your biggest insights around just humankind and the kindness of people and your personal embodied experiences of what it means to not only be, like, what does it mean to be kind? Like, what does that actually mean? And what's your take on this kindness with strangers?
Yeah, look, I think the greatest lesson I learned, not just from doing the show, but from traveling, is that ultimately at the base of our humanity, we're all the same. We just want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be loved. Doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter how rich you are, doesn't matter how poor you are. At base, we are all looking for the same thing. And that was a profound realization, because if you look at the news, it will tell you that we're all different. But when you travel the world, you realize that we're not. And it takes you into a whole different kind of understanding of our home, let's say, Earth. When it comes to the issue of kindness, my definition of kindness has always been to help someone feel less alone. Literally that's it. If you do that and you live that way, what a beautiful thing. Doesn't mean that I do it perfectly all the time. I don't, by any stretch of the imagination. And I think part of the reason why I got into this like travel and kindness thing is because I don't do it all the time. And I did this so that I could put myself into a box to try and do it as often as I can. And to me, kindness is a win-win. If I'm kind to you, you're going to win, but so am I. Like some people say, oh, true kindness is only if it's totally selfless. Doesn't mean that I do it perfectly all the time. I don't, by any stretch of the imagination. And I think part of the reason why I got into this like travel and kindness thing is because I don't do it all the time. And I did this so that I could put myself into a box to try and do it as often as I can. And to me, kindness is a win-win. If I'm kind to you, you're going to win, but so am I. Like some people say, oh, true kindness is only if it's totally selfless. I don't know about that. You know, did Mother Teresa get something beneficial out of being kind? Of course she did. The Dalai Lama, does he get something out of being kind? Of course he did. It's okay. It doesn't have to be selfless, because it's a win-win.
That's really powerful, yeah. And it's what's been really transformational for me, what you're saying about everybody having this, there's like this common universal template of what it is that we want and we need. And one of the things that while I was traveling is I interviewed everybody and I asked them the same 5 questions. I asked them, what's your dream? What does love mean to you? What does friendship mean to you? If, nothing was an issue and you lived in the perfect world, like what kind of life would you live? And what is your personal oasis? Like what does heaven look like to you? And I asked these questions to the same again and again to all of my hosts. Like I think I have a Word document. I was just doing it for fun of over 70, answers from people all over the world. This desire to live a life well lived, this desire to be on purpose, this desire to be like with your loved ones and to be in connection to people, this like really deep longing that we all have as human beings to not feel alone in our existence. And that was just consistent in the places and spaces, and something that people often ask me and that shocked me, and I'm sure you had an experience of we can meet people for just minutes and connect with them and just like open ourselves up to each other. I mean, these people were opening, like they're letting me in their house. That's so intimate. It's so vulnerable. And for me to be received like that, it really cracked me open in a profound way, because I left New York with, I talk a lot about my trauma healing journey, like with so much trauma, with so much relational trauma, fear of people hurting me, fear of people taking advantage of me, and something that you said around, I'm not always this way, so I had to create my environment, my life, and the way that you've shaped it is so that you are in a space where you're constantly being reminded that kindness is the way, It's a constant reminder. You created that reality for yourself. And for me, this is the reality I needed to create for myself, which is that a life well lived is a life where I trust people. Now that I know what I know and I've lived what I've lived, I don't want to live a life where I don't trust people. I don't want to live a life where, I have to always take care of all my stuff because someone's going to steal it, or I have to like always watch for my back because what if somebody goes and takes advantage? And that's not to say like don't be wise. If you're in the middle of a city, don't leave your wallet like in the middle of a busy coffee shop. But it's more to say that I want and I choose my default setting to be trusting people around me, and I rather trust first and then retract it if that person breaks that trust, than walk around being closed and skeptical of everyone around me. Because what I have found is that people are more trustworthy than they're not. That's been my experience, and perhaps you could argue that that's the reality I've created based on my belief systems of people being trustworthy. But people often ask like, oh my God, you're a woman, you're an attractive woman traveling the world alone, like sleeping in the homes of strangers, wasn't that dangerous for you? And the truth is that over 100 people that I stayed with, I would say 1.5 was creepy, as in like one was like, oh, this is questionable, and one person I had to like literally leave the house when they weren't home because it was really, really questionable. But that's 1%, right? That's one person over 100. And so what I realized is that people are worth trusting, and when we trust in them and we believe in them, then they also get to rise to that occasion. and not everybody's going to do it, and that's okay. But I'd rather live my life like that than to live it any other way. And when I left New York City, it was me not, I didn't know that, but I wanted to believe it. And going around this journey, I started to believe it. I felt it. I witnessed it. I saw people and what they did. So I'd be curious, because I see you nodding your head, and what your thoughts are and your experience is around that.
Well, look, I think trust, it's about trusting our intuition. And you said you went to 100 places and 99 were good. So you were trusting your intuition. And you know, once you got it a bit off, it's fine, but your intuition came into play and you left, right? So I think if we trust ourselves, then we trust ourselves to make the right decisions. And I think most people are good. Some aren't, and bad things happen. And even sometimes when our intuition is in play, bad things will happen. If we turn on the news, we see bad things happening all the time. But if we don't turn on the news and we just go with our souls and our hearts and our intuition, we can guide ourselves to living the way that you've been living. If you wanted to change that way of life, just turn on the news and just watch it for 24 hours a day. You wouldn't go outside your house. You'd be like, you know, this is a disaster. But, you know, you proved by doing what you did that there's another way to live. And well done.
Thanks. Well, in my work, I talk a lot about intuition, because I really feel like that is such a driving force to a life well lived, and to come back into our heart. And it's interesting, because when I left New York, it's almost like my intuition was driving, but I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't sure what it was. And what I have found is, like, throughout the years, as I've been doing this work and becoming more attentive to this concept called intuition, then now I'm in a space where I can actively listen to my intuition. And, you know, I talk about this a lot, but I'm curious about your perspective on what it actually means to connect to your intuition. And for people who maybe are like, yeah, but is it my intuition or is it my mind? Like, how do I know if it's my intuition? What's your take on intuition? And also, how would you advise somebody to actually know that it's their intuition that's doing the talking?
That sounds like a question for a guru, but
It's okay.
I'll try. Look, many years ago, I was in Thailand. I share this story often, and I was with a friend, and we were out on the streets, and a tuk-tuk came by, and we needed a tuk-tuk, and he said he'd take us, and I said to my friend, there's something not right about this. Let's not get into the tuk-tuk. And my friend said, no, it's fine, let's get into the tuk-tuk. I said, something doesn't feel right. We should not get into this tuk-tuk. And he said, no, everything's fine, let's get into the tuk-tuk. I was like, all right. So we get into the tuk-tuk, and the tuk-tuk takes us to, without us asking, takes us to an opium den, right? We didn't ask to go to an opium den. We just wanted to go from A to B. And I never forgot that moment, because I was like, okay, your intuition, your feeling inside your soul told you not to get into that tuk-tuk, but you did. So next time you have a feeling that says don't do something, listen to it, right? So it's really about listening, not necessarily to what's going on out there, but to what's going on in here, right? If you can listen to what's going on in here, then you are connecting to your intuition. There was another time where I was in Panama many years ago, and they told me, do not walk out at night. I was in the Panama Canal. I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to do whatever I want. He said, do not walk out at night. I was like, yeah, whatever. I walked out at night, and I ended up getting beaten up, right? There was another moment. I was like, okay. Because when they said don't walk out, I felt it. I was like, but my mind said, no, you're going to be fine. So I took that feeling, which said don't walk out at night, based on what they were saying to me, and I just ignored it. So I wasn't listening to what was happening inside. If you listen to what's happening inside, it's a whole new way of being, right? I had a teacher. He was trying to get me to meditate, and I wouldn't. And then one day he looks at me and he says, if you don't meditate, you're fucked. I was like, oh, all right. Literally, for the past 15 years, I have meditated every single day after he said that to me. And I realized what he meant. It was basically, if you don't meditate, if you don't get silent, if you don't feel, if you don't listen, there's no hope to truly be human, right? To understand and feel your humanity. So I never forgot that. And there have been a couple of times where I haven't meditated, right? I think I've fallen asleep many, many times when I've been meditating. But there's like 5 or 6 times in the past 15 years that I haven't meditated. One of those times was a couple of days ago. And I woke up and I was like, oh God, if you don't meditate, you're fucked. So I ended up meditating in the morning at 6 a.m. And I kind of said it was the day before, but whatever. So just listen to what's going on instead of listening out there to all the craziness, right?
Well, that was honestly better than what I think a guru could have answered. I liked it. It was more down to, if you don't meditate, I think you passed that on to me now. I'm like, shit, I gotta meditate, I'm fucked. I love that. Yeah, I mean, this is something that when it comes to a lot of the work that I do and a lot of what I share is around following your soul's purpose and listening to what is going on inside. Because when I started to do my work as a mentor and as a coach, I realized I had a lot of very successful people coming to me. And before I personally got it, it was around, okay, how do I get more followers, and how do I get more known in my industry and more media, and how do I make more money, and how do I like help more people? And you know, it's funny because in the beginning of my work I got quite good because somehow I just knew how to help people do that. So I did help people get more followers, I did help people make more money, I did help people make more impact, but all the while I was scratching my head going like, okay, this is good, they're getting results and I'm getting paid to get people results, but I'm not really feeling fully satiated here because these results are coming in, but I'm not really seeing like the quality of life improving in that, you know? And that's when I started off as more of a consultant. And my transition into coaching was when I realized and took a stand for what I believed in, which at first I was really like quiet about it, and now I'm very vocal about it, which is it doesn't fucking matter. If you have all of these things externally, if inside you're not feeling fulfilled, if you have no time for yourself, if you have no time for your children, if you have no time for your lover, if you're constantly, walking around all day just feeling like you're reacting to your environment, like you're reacting to people, like you are a victim to things outside of you, like you're a victim to your past conditioning and what happened to you in the past. And that's when I really got that, and I got it through my own experience of, building a business really quickly, and then, getting followers and getting on Forbes and getting on TEDx. And I had that like taste of that fruit, so to say, and then realized like, wait, I'm still not feeling good. And I had a health crisis in 2019 where, I got really, really sick right after my TED Talk. Like literally minutes after I gave my TED Talk, I collapsed on a chair, and 24 hours later I was in the emergency room. And I thought to myself, I had this thing on my vision board for 3 years. All I wanted to do was do a TED Talk. And I delivered that TED Talk with a lot of heart, and I still mean what I said there. And also, why is it that I worked so hard to create this entire thing for myself, only to be in a hospital bed by myself in a foreign country with nobody here to like help me or support me that I knew? Of course, there's like nurses and things like that and kind people. But what did I do here? And that's when kind of like the illusion crumbled again. And I realized that, okay, it's not just about building your dream externally. People leave the job and then you start a business. But then what do people do? They take the patterns from their corporate job and they copy and paste it into their business, and now they're a slave to their own business, which is even worse than being a corporate, like in corporate, you know? Or they'll take, you know, they'll say, I want to move to a different country, and then they'll move to a different country, and then they'll take themselves with them, and then they're still too busy, still don't have time, still don't get to, like, they don't get to enjoy the coconut on the beach because they're still inside their office all day because they've just copied and pasted their past into their future. And realizing that within myself, I realized that I needed to shift the person that I was inside. And that looked like really looking within. And what you're saying, I had to listen to myself, and I had to start getting in a deeper connection with my internal landscape and actually acknowledge the connection that your inner world informs your external world. And if you're a victim to the external world informing your internal world, then you end up in a place like you did in London and I did in New York City, where you're just reacting to life as opposed to, you know, coming back into the driver's seat of your life. And so I'd be curious as to what your take is on, you know, I know you've talked about intuition, you talked about the meditation piece, but what has been your experience in terms of when you change your internal world, your external world starts to change, and also the, you know, this chase that we can have around these external things, that money, fame, even helping people I found to be in an addiction, right? Because some people start to measure their worth by the amount of people that they've helped. And I'm like, this sounds honorable and noble, but it's actually not, because if you haven't helped like 30 people today, then now you feel like you're a loser. And that's you're still in the same freaking trap. So I'm sure that, and you live in LA, so I'm sure like you're very familiar with this trap. So I was wondering if you could shed light on it and expose it and give us your wisdom there.
What's the question exactly?
So the question is, what is your take? I'm curious to hear your philosophy and your take around this constant chase for more money, more impact, more influence. And where have you actually, in your experience, found the true fulfillment to be?
That's a great question. Look, I spent many years chasing likes, chasing fame, chasing success. I'm kind of in a flux as we sit here today, right now, where I'm kind of trying to get out of that and trying to get into a place where what it is that I'm actually truly supposed to do in my life starts flowing. The challenge is that giving up all of that is not easy. And I think to myself, well, if I stop doing shows, if I stop writing books, if I stop posting, then my career is going to fall off a cliff. But all the wise people keep telling me, do nothing, and in the nothing, everything will come to you. Yeah. And I'm on the cusp of listening to them, right? I haven't fully been able to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny, it's like the universe is a weird place because I keep trying to do it. And then what happens? My distributor sends me a message saying, do you want to do Kindness Diaries Season 3? I'm like, please, no. Just leave me alone. Or my book person comes and says, well, do you want to do this? And it's like a battle between going down that road, which is a road I've been down, or going down the road of, look, I just need some time. Just please leave me alone. Right? So I don't know if I've answered your question, but it's a great question because I'm like in the middle of trying to like understand it and do the nothing part.
And you know what? I'm so glad you're speaking into this, because it's better than if you're like, well, listen, this is how I figured it all out, and here's what it looks like. Because what you're speaking into is really real, and you know, we're very kindred spirits for many, many reasons. But I'm going through something similar as well, where I have, you know, my mentor as well saying, okay, are you ready to slow down? Like, why would I do that? Well, because in the slowing down, in the nothingness, in the space that you create, there is wisdom. Like you start to receive information, you start to receive ideas. But the impulse is so strong, especially as like a very driven person who wants to like genuinely contribute. Like we want to contribute. It's not like we don't want to do these things. It's more so that there's something in us, or at least I can speak for myself. There's something in me that knows she's right. Speaking of intuition, right? There's something in me that these wise people are saying, hey, slow down to speed back up. Like allow slow to overcome fast and allow soft to overcome hard. And when I hear those words, I'm like, just like the Panama thing. Yeah, I agree with that. And then my mind's like, yeah, but what do they know? Like, right? Like let me just go run and do this other thing and do this show or do this book and do this thing and do that thing. And so I really relate, and I think a lot of people relate to that, because when you are in a space of building and creating, and you know the thing you're creating is helping a lot of people, like you know that what you're creating, and you know, I've read your books, like I know I see your blogs as well, like I know that what you're creating is still coming from your depths, and there's more that wants to come through, and there's bigger that wants to come through. And we almost get, I know my experience has been that because I get so comfortable in my delivery of me giving here, it gets really hard to get out of that comfort bubble of, well, if I just like let this go, could something greater come in? And there's like this fear of, I don't know, but this is working, so let me just hold on to this because this is working, right? And then my intuition says, but what if I let this go and something even bigger comes in? I know you were going to say something, I'd be curious.
I would ask you, is it really working for you? Right? And I can only ask that question to you because I'm asking it to myself as well. You know, I was at a workshop for the past few days, and everyone was so gung-ho. They were like machines, you know, and I'm sure they're all going to be extraordinarily successful. They were like machines, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, you know, I need to turn off my machine. I don't need to be a machine. I need to turn it off for like 3 months, 6 months, whatever. I noticed that you had a book called About Emptiness. Is that?
Which book?
There's a book in there. Is that your book?
Emptiness. Yes,
Okay,
yes, by Luhan. He's going to be on the podcast as well. Yeah.
I mean,
The Power of Emptiness.
I was like, I saw that book when I walked in, and I was like,
You need that
that's
book.
interesting. I definitely need that book.
You need the book.
Because that's basically what we're talking about. And that's what all the wise people have been saying to me. Like, in the nothingness, you know? And it's just like a leap of faith to actually do that. Because we've been taught, do. And when someone says, don't do, you're like, don't do. My goodness, what's going to happen if I don't do? I don't know.
It's funny because the subtitle, I forget what the exact subtitle was, but there's something around the being, knowing, and not doing. That's part of the subtitle of that book. It's really interesting you caught it because it was just like a microsecond. You must have seen it. But yeah, it's the undoing. It's a lot. But you know what's really interesting? When you were saying this, I'm like, we know how to do this. You know what I mean? Like the Beautiful Madness, like you freaking hitchhike from Times Square all the way to the Hollywood sign. It's not like you don't know how to do something hard or scary, right?
It's crazy,
but it's
right?
like the next evolution is this, and that's what it feels. I mean, is it working? The answer is it's working enough. But is it working enough to satiate my soul at the level that my soul's like thirsty, asking for the next expansion? Not really.
But the fact that you're talking about this means that you're on the path.
Yeah.
And that there will be a moment where you take that leap of faith and you're like, you know what? It's done. It's done. And I hope you find it soon.
Yeah.
As I say that,
I'm not waiting for the crisis.
Well.
I'm not waiting for the crisis. It's like, that's why I'm so motivated to get on it. When I notice these patterns, I'm like, okay, I'm listening. I'm going to listen a little harder because I know what the alternative is, which is when you don't listen, the universe comes knocking and they will sometimes knock you off your ass. So you listen, right? But you get to ask, no, thank you. I'm going to do it the more easeful, graceful way. saying this out loud, but it's interesting as we're speaking into this, because I think now is the time for us to have that conversation that you're trying to have with me on the phone about annihilation.
Yes.
So what is it that you wanted to say?
Tell if you can tell me about the Annihilation blog in like a minute, and I'll tell you.
Yeah. Okay, so I've pulled up my phone so that we can read. I'm going to read to you all this blog post that Leon is referring to about annihilation, and then we're going to talk about it.
All right.
All right?
And we've been trying to talk about it for months now.
We've been trying. Yeah, he's been trying to call me. I'm calling him. Time zones are not working. And I thought to myself, I think it's because we're supposed to talk about this on the podcast, so it's perfect. All right, here we are. People will go to fame and legacy to mitigate the fear of their own annihilation. As humans, we have a deep yearning to be seen and remembered. That's why fame and visibility is so intoxicating. It gives us a temporary sense of relief and reprieve from the inevitable fact that comes with being human, that at one point you will be annihilated. Death leaves no one behind. You will die, you will be gone, ashes to dust. And then what? What after that? A mystery that cannot be solved, only theorized upon, at least in this timeline and dimension. The unknown of what comes after what we call death is so void, so unknown, so empty. It's confronting and sometimes very painful. To know that you are a unique event in the universe, a 1 in a billion's probability, there will never be another you. To know, also know that in the end, you're also nothing. A speck of dust in an endless galaxy, a blip on the timeline of humanity, most likely to be forgotten in just a few generations. It's so uncomfortable that the vast majority of humanity can't stand it. So we avoid feeling this pain with a desire to be seen and to be known. When we distill this into the most basic principles, it looks like, I want to be famous, I want to be known, I want to be remembered for the things I've done, I want to leave a legacy. But what is this really, this desire to be remembered, artfully covered up by the story and satisfaction of all the people whose lives you'll change and all the good things you'll do in the world? What if we flip it to, I fear being forgotten, I fear not being seen, I fear leaving this planet without having done something to mark my worth, I fear living a life of no meaning. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with desiring to be remembered, with wanting to leave a mark in this lifetime and experiencing being seen by others for it. Just be aware, when you're asking for visibility, what is it that you're really craving? When you want more public relations, what is it that you want to be known for? When you want others to recognize you for your efforts, what's the deeper motivator, and what does it come from, your ego or your soul? In my work, I interface with so many people who have forgotten what the visibility is for, why they want it, what the underlying fears and desires are. To get radically honest with that is the first step to creating the legacy you desire from a space of humility and grace, rather than to compensate for unconscious wounding that still hasn't been resolved through your system. The biggest irony is when you get clear and grounded on why you want the legacy, the light and shadow side, it arrives faster. Because now it is a conscious choice instead of unconscious reaction to unmet needs and unaddressed desires.
That was written by a guru, clearly. No, I'm serious. It's brilliant.
It came through, and it clearly was a message that wanted to come through. But yeah, that's the annihilation post. So what is it that you wanted to say?
Do you know what? As you were reading it, it just came to me that a lot of what I did was about ego, right? Getting on the TV shows, being on stages, writing books. And I have to get to a place where the service is the most important thing and the ego isn't. And I feel like I'm now at a place where the ego isn't strong enough to propel me to do all the things I was doing. But the need to serve isn't strong enough either. So I'm kind of like in limbo land, right? And I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah, you're in the void, in the space in between.
Yeah.
Where you're like, no, I'm not motivated. This isn't catnip to me anymore. This isn't interesting to me anymore from an ego perspective. But then you're also not fully connected to the service yet because you haven't had your nothing time.
Exactly.
So it's like this limbo of, well, this is not for me.
Yes.
But I'm still like keeping busy and I'm still doing stuff. But there's this like thing, my soul's call, my intuition is calling this thing forward, but you're not yet connected to it because you haven't created the space for it.
Yes. And then, I go to this workshop and people are all about doing. And that's great. Let them be like that. No issues, no worry. Do whatever you want to do. And then I've got people telling me, oh, you know what? You have to do more. And then I've got people telling me do nothing. And I've got to take that leap of faith to actually do nothing. And, having this conversation with you is actually pretty profound for me, because there are certain things I have to do for my career that involves making some very serious changes to get to the place of doing nothing. But that is kind of like counterintuitive to what we're always told to do. And I'm close. There's a couple of things I need to do that will get me to that place, which I am going to do them. But it's not... I just spent a week in Antigua, which is an amazing island. Have you been to Antigua?
No, and I thought you would mean Antigua, Guatemala, but this is different.
Antigua,
okay.
Yeah. And it's like, there's so much love there. You feel the energy of this place. It's like, opens up your heart in such a beautiful way. I was there for 7 days, doing nothing. And then I came back to the world, let's say, and had a meltdown. The same way that I told you about what happened in Nepal. I did Nepal, I was there having an amazing moment, then came home and had a meltdown. So you'd think everything's the same, but it's not, because something shifted. Something shifted when I returned back to London, and something shifted now. And having this conversation with you kind of grounds that moment of change. Like I had a moment today, in Venice actually. I go to Buddhist meetings every couple of days, and I just had a total meltdown. And they were all so kind and so loving. But that meltdown was actually a good thing, right? Because it further got me closer to jumping off that nothing bridge, right? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. So we'll see. I have to review it and see whether it's any good.
See, we did need to have this conversation. I knew it. Yeah, well, it's this piece. What keeps coming up when you're speaking about this is just that it takes, in today's society, it takes courage to do nothing and to claim that for yourself, especially when you're a busy man with a lot of responsibilities and a lot of accountability to others. It takes courage, and it does take an act of it does take effort, and it does take like an act of you being like, block off my schedule, I'm truly doing this. And also understanding that from a nervous system level, we have been accustomed, like in today's modern day age, like we're accustomed to running so high in the sympathetic state, being like constantly go, 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 do, like adrenals are on, like there's a lot of physiological reactions that we're having as well. And so when we're making this choice to slow down and create emptiness and create space for ourselves, because intuitively we know inside of us that this is the next step that we need to take. It's also important to understand, it's like if somebody's telling you to run a marathon and you got to do it by next Tuesday, like that's gonna hurt. There's gonna be like, you're gonna get some sprained ankles, you're gonna get some, like it's gonna require a level of exercise and recalibration that you might not be able to handle. If you do, it's going to come to the detriment of your well-being, emotional, mental, physical. And one of the things, I talk to my clients a lot about, and as I talk to them about it, I'm like, I also continue to practice this, is that there's a bit of a runway that needs to happen when you're saying like doing nothing. Like your nervous system needs to like get used to less stimulation. And that's something that you might need to down-regulate it. It might look like 1 hour in the morning, then turns into 2 hours, then turns into 3 hours. Like it's like almost like an exercise. You got to stretch yourself into being able to hold that emptiness when you're so used to filling it all the time. It's like this state of, how do I double my meditation time? How do I increase my dosage of stillness and nothingness without like out-resourcing myself to the point where I'm having freaking meltdowns every week, right? And so I think speaking of kindness to strangers, like that kindness to ourselves, to actually, be in a state of, you know what, I do need to slow down, and you know what, like this is important to me. I intuitively know this is the way, and I'm in this weird limbo right now. So how can I like slowly transition into the next space? Because I think there's this expectation, because it's like, I want to show, I'm going to call this person, I'm going to do this thing, I need to write the script, I need to approve this thing. But that's not the pathway to nothing. It's so counterintuitive. So I think it's also like a really cool invitation to literally change the way that we're walking this path. One of the things that one of my beautiful mentors says is, you are traveling nowhere at the speed of love.
That's great.
She always says that to me, and I'm like,
really
oh
good.
yeah.
Traveling nowhere at the speed of love.
Speed of love,
wow.
yeah.
She's a wise one.
She's a wise one, yeah. Yeah, so.
It could be a good book title.
I know.
Traveling nowhere at the speed of love.
It's beautiful.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So I look to remember that as much as I can, of like, where am I actually going, and at what pace, and is it my ego that's running right now, or is it that my soul, like, what does my soul actually want? I just want love, and I want to live in love, and I want to be in love, and everything else I do is just like mechanisms for me to like do that, right?
Sure.
It's like mechanisms for me to create more time to spend with people I love. It's like mechanisms to create more money, to do things I love, to fly to people I love, to, create more opportunities, to be of service, so that I can remember like selfless love. Like it's just this constant, how do I get back into wholeness and love? And then we create all of these strategies to get there in the matrix. But at the end of the day, it's like, the end road is the same. It's like us trying to get back into wholeness and source and oneness and love, whatever you want to call it. But we just like take so many pathways there and just distract the fuck out of ourselves along the way. So.
Wow, that was a profound, whatever just happened. It was beautiful. No, I'm serious. It was a beautiful channeling of something magnificent.
Thank you. Like, I'll have to re-listen to that. Yeah. I like lost myself there. I was like, what?
No, it was beautiful.
I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when I wrote my elation post, I'm like, okay, something's coming through. Bing! Let it come through. And that happens in presence and in love.
There you go.
Ta-da! So anyways, we are going to begin to close out this episode. And before we do, I'm wondering if there's any final words of wisdom or anything you've learned today that you want to share with us. Any big insights? I think you've had a few.
I mean, what was it your mentor said?
Traveling nowhere at the speed of love.
Traveling nowhere at the speed of love. Wow. There you go. There's nothing else needs to be said. Seriously. Traveling nowhere at the speed of love.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Right? And we live in a world where it's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Right? Traveling everywhere at the speed of ego, whatever. You know? Yeah.
It's a different way to walk our path. It's a different strut.
Yes, it most certainly is.
Yeah, and sometimes I notice when I'm like speed walking again, like a New Yorker, like, hold on, wait a minute, slow down. There's a flower. Look at the flower. And at first it's very mechanical. It's very like, Celine, slow down, look at the flower, flower to the left, turn to the left, and there's a bit of like machine going on. But then when you like drop into the flower, it's like, the rose garden in Venice or in near Santa Monica. I'm like, roses. And you're like in the rose. But before then I was like, okay, you've had a very long day. Get an Uber, get to the rose garden. It is important.
That's exactly how I felt about the event that I just went to. There's no shame, there's no judgment. They're machines. They're gonna create great success. They're gonna touch many lives. Good for them. But I was like, I didn't want to be a machine. Yeah. I don't know. It was like this. The beauty of this is just. if you can create from here, I mean, it's over.
It's a retraining. It's a remembering, I think. So, Leon, for people who have loved this conversation and want to go and find you, could you share with us where we can go and find you?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at the Kindness Guy, and you can watch the Kindness Diaries on Discovery Plus, and you can buy the book Go Be Brave on Amazon and any bookstore. Good luck.
Beautiful. Well, Leon, thank you so much for joining us today. And also a special thank you for being one of the human beings who changed my life and set me on this. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. So thank you for retweeting a random lady's blog and supporting me in that way and getting on that call and giving me your advice and putting a good word in for Cambodia. I mean, all of these small little things that were you being your kind, everyday self. Actually, like, I am a living testament of the way that these small little acts of kindness have actually changed a life. And I know you've changed many, many more lives than I have. So I'm happy to be a living testament of that and to have received from you in that way. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning in to today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta or visiting my website at CelineDaCosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.